Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's call. My name is Chris Munns. I'm the chair of the Hampton Democratic Committee. Melanie Munns, our vice chair, and I were asked by the Rockingham County Democrats to help Democrats in North Hampton resurrect the Town Democratic Committee. There's a lot that we need to do in 2022, starting with reelecting Maggie Hassan and Chris Pappas, electing a Democrat as our next governor, making Janet Stevens a one-term executive counselor and electing a Democrat to replace her, and regaining the majorities in the New Hampshire Senate and the New Hampshire House of Representatives, and having a strong and active local committee in all of our towns, including North Hampton, is a key to our being successful. Melanie and I want to do what we can to bring Democrats in North Hampton together, to meet each other for the first time, or in many cases to reestablish acquaintances. Our email addresses are pretty simple. Mine is chrismunns@chrismunns.net, and Melanie's is melmunns56, melmunns56 @gmail.com. If you have any questions or comments after this meeting, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. At the end of the day, what we would really like to see is, one or several of you step forward and, take over leadership of the local committee if you're interested in doing so. And if so, we'll just step back and offer what assistance and support we can. And ultimately, we'd like to see there be a committee in North Hampton that we can partner with in Hampton. But until that happens, we're happy to stay involved and try to create opportunities for Democrats in North Hampton to get together. One way that you can stay connected is to follow the North Hampton Democratic Committee Facebook page. Melanie and I are currently babysitting that. If you're not following it, you can do so at facebook.com/Northampton NH Dems. And, please follow that. So I'm very happy that State Representative Jim Maggiore and State Senator Tom Sherman are with us tonight. Everyone in North Hampton should be very happy and pleased that they have been representing you for the last 4 years. They provide the kind of level-headed leadership that's so lacking among the so-called Republican leadership in Concord. And they're here to provide you with an update on what's going on in Concord and answer any questions that you have. And I'm going to, ask that they both, provide their perspective, but I'm going to start with Representative Maggiore. So Jim, take it away.
Chris, thank you. Thank you so much for hosting this and organizing this, and for all that you and Melanie do for democracy, not just Democrats, but democracy in this area. It's so important. Things in Concord, when 1,000 bills come through the House and the Senate, it's difficult at times to stay in the lanes or to travel out of the lanes that you need to understand the impacts that all of that legislation can have locally. We're very lucky with Joan and with Senator Sherman to have people who stay on top of these things and represent us in different ways in different committees in the House and the Senate, so that when this stuff filters down to us at the most important levels, which is here in our homes and everywhere we walk around outside in the streets, that we stay safe and we're secure, and that we're not being overrun by fringe elements. But unfortunately, the fringe elements right now seem to have a foothold, and they are enjoying it. And I would challenge Representative Hamblett and Senator Sherman to say that that's wrong, because I think that's what the problem is right now. The fringe element from the Republicans, and let's be honest, there are wonderful Republicans out there, a lot of them, but there's a fringe element. How many? I'm not 100% sure. 50, 20, 11, whatever the number is. That fringe element has a foothold right now, and they are controlling everything that is happening through the House. If there is a good piece of legislation that has a chance of surviving, they table it. If there is a challenging piece of legislation that they feel is going to tarnish their reputation or bring up issues that they are afraid of, they table it. You'll notice if you look at any of our calendars, how much legislation, Joan, gets tabled. We sit there and we say, oh, that's going to get tabled. That's going to get tabled. Oh, you're going to pass that one because it's on consent. Okay, well, that one was just to, recognize that ants are small. Anything right now that is of import is tabled by the Republicans unless they can fast track it through the House. And I'm sorry that I get upset about this, but we've seen so many good things just die, so many bad things move through, but we have had some victories in the House, some good things that we are happy that got tabled, but we have had a couple of good things. So we need good people, we need honest people, people who care about, again, democracy. It doesn't have to be just Democrats, but it seems like that's where all the good people are, who care about democracy right now, so that when we're up in Concord, we can work together in an open, honest, and transparent way to get good legislation through. And maybe I'm, talking too philosophically right now and at the 30,000 foot level, but that's the frustration that I am feeling right now, that you have to work through on a daily basis in order to make sure that we're doing the right stuff for all of you good folks. And I might ask Representative Hamblett and Senator Sherman if I'm off base or to fill in all the blanks that I have left there.
But before they do that, I want to, offer an apology. I neglected to introduce Representative Joan Hamlet, who is also representing North Hampton, and thank God that she has been. And also I'm glad that you brought her name up, Jim, and I invite her to provide her perspective as well. So my apologies, Representative Hamlet.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, no, I agree with everything Jim says. That's exactly what's happening. The fringe, the hard right fringe has just taken over. So it's a battle. We passed a couple good bills last week.
Can you give us a couple of examples of, some of the, the good bills that passed or the good bills that you defeated?
Yeah, I think it was 1609, House Bill 1609 was the bill to, and it passed by miraculously passed by 5 votes to, in the Fetal Protection Act, it banned all abortions after 24 weeks and required an ultrasound for anybody considering an abortion. And so this bill enacted an exception for rape, incest, or fatal fetal anomaly. And so, I mean, that was, and it took away the mandate for the ultrasounds. So, I mean, that was a huge victory for us. That's the only one I can think of at the moment. That one was huge. So.
And to jump on that, something that's so important right now, but is also a challenge, is attendance. We have leadership from the Republican side, from the majority in the House right now, which of course has resisted any kind of protections. Well, they've tried to instill protections for us against this pandemic by meeting remotely until this next session. We're actually going to be meeting in the House again. But we've had a number of people who just cannot be in the House right now. The vote that Jordan's talking about, we had one person missing from the House. She happened to be on my committee. And I literally ran out into the parking lot to find her, bring her back in so that we could reconsider the vote. Attendance is absolutely crucial because right now, and this goes to the point about electing good people, the margin is only 20 people between having the minority and the majority in the House. So literally every single vote, you think, it's just one vote. Every single vote is so critically important. And that's why we need good people there. That one vote made the difference between passing and failing something that protects women's rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to get up to shut that door because there's a little movement in my house. I'll be right back.
Tom, you want to jump in with your perspective on what's happening?
Sure. We have some good and we have a lot that's frustrating. We don't have the same level of fringe far right, but what we have is an unwillingness, just a wall in terms of looking at issues, and most of this comes out of the budget from last year. So just running through these, first of all, speaking of a wall, redistricting, we offered alternative plans, we offered all sorts of options, and I think maybe Jim and Joan may want to review the fate of North Hampton under the House redistricting plan, which we just passed back to the House. But on the Senate side, redistricting is interesting. District 24 loses Newcastle, Seabrook, Southampton, and Newton, as well as Kensington. And we get Exeter, which is kind of, I don't live there, but I've worked there for 10 years or 11 years. So it's kind of an interesting change in the district. Both the Democratic and the Republican redistricting plan for District 24 actually put Exeter into 24. So it's kind of an interesting commingling. What the Democratic one did, though, was it took 23, which is John Morgan's old district, and wrapped it up and around so that it was much more balanced. That district is virtually unwinnable by a Democrat unless, there's a major act of God. But every one of the districts that they moved over to District 23, except Kensington, I've lost them both of the last, actually all of the last 3 elections. And I lost Seabrook by 1,000 votes. So it's, I love Seabrook, actually. It's one of my favorite towns, but I don't miss the challenge that it represents for getting votes.
So Northampton will still be in District 24, correct?
As will Hampton, yeah.
Okay.
And the two that we have not seen yet, we're actually in charge of the executive council redistricting that comes out of off the Senate side. And the original version of that would have left it the same. But actually the executive councilors, 3 of the 4 were upset by that. 3 of the 4 Republicans, and they have gotten together and apparently are working on an alternative plan. The governor has said that District 2, which is the dragon, it's that one that goes all the way across the state that Cindy Warmington has, is ridiculous, or it does not pass, I think he said, the sniff test, but I'm not sure he'll be vetoing anything. And his pattern has been to say he doesn't agree with something and then he goes ahead and signs it anyway, like SB3 on voting rights.
What is the current status of the House districts as it affects Northampton?
Jim, do you want to, can you or Joan? I think Joan, you move out of the district,
Yep.
right?
Right, I get moved out. Yes, I have, yeah. I would not be representing Greenland or Northampton or Newington.
So it becomes Greenland and Northampton, isn't that right, Jim?
Yeah, what would happen is Northampton would retain the 1, and then the flotarial would be Greenland, Northampton, Rye.
Okay.
And then I don't know the change. I'm trying to think of the change to Hampton. There's a flotarial for Hampton Seabrook, and then you retain the 4 for Hampton.
Right.
So that, yeah, I think I have that right.
And
So Northampton would have one dedicated seat, which is the seat that you currently hold, right, Jim?
Correct.
And then you'd have a shared seat with Greenland and Rye.
Greenland and Rye, correct.
And
Yeah.
and who from are one of the incumbents from either Greenland or Rye planning to run for that seat?
Well, Jackie's running in Green, there's a new district now. Greenland is now with Rye instead of with Newington,
Mhm.
and we get 2 reps. So Dennis and Jackie will be running for Rye and
Okay.
Greenland.
Okay.
But we need someone, if these don't get vetoed, which they probably won't, we'll need someone to run for the floterial.
So if we've got any person in North Hampton that's interested in public service, this would be their opportunity.
Right, and
Exactly.
also, so the floterial is Rye, Greenland, and Northampton. Alice has a wonderful group, the Greenland Dems. There's a great group of Rye Dems, in other words, organized. So anyone from Northampton who is interested probably should reach out to Alice
Okay.
and coordinate.
And
I
then,
reached out to Tamara Lee. Sounds like she's running for school board, which is wonderful. And Jim, if you have any ideas about who might be interested in running, or anyone else on this call, that would be great to know about.
I think there are some people also in Rye who are interested. And so
Okay.
I think that would be great if it could be coordinated between the 3 towns. Maybe Larry can help with that too.
it
I
would
can
be
reach
very
out to
helpful because
Stacy.
what we think, what the folks in the who talk about these things here in Northampton feel is that a woman from Northampton, Kirsten Larson Schultz, is a likely candidate to run either against me or for that seat. It's more likely she would run for that seat than against me. I've beaten her before. She is polarizing. I won't lie. I can be polarizing if I have to be.
Okay.
But I've already beaten her. The problem is Kirsten Larson Schultz is on that fringe. She's a free stater. She has made multiple attempts to not just cut the school budget, but to eviscerate the school budget based on what she would consider to be facts that are not facts at all. So there is I think a very real risk that, and I just hate to speak, meanly about somebody or disparagingly about somebody, but I have to. Kirsten Larson Schultz is out on that fringe of being in the Free State. She is likely to run for a seat, and she has significant support.
Okay.
We need somebody good to run against her. Otherwise, that fringe, that radical right, gets one more vote.
Can the 3 of you talk a little bit about the attacks on public education that have been taking place? Because that seems to be one of the real areas that this radical right fringe is focusing in on. And there have been several bills, I think, that have come up on that topic.
Yeah, I can just do a quick overview of what's happening in the Senate. That was one of the things I was going to review. Let me just, if I could, just finish up on the Senate really quickly. There's women's reproductive rights, virtually every bill to repeal or replace or fix, or on the Fetal Protection Act, unfortunately failed except for one, which is where they put in an amendment to redefine the ultrasound requirement. So coming out of the Senate, what you'll see on the House coming from the Senate is one bill, and that bill will change the ultrasound requirement to really starting at 24 weeks, but still no exception for rape or incest, and nowhere close to fixing the problems with the original bill. Divisive concepts. We heard the repeal of that today. It went nowhere. So every effort to repeal divisive concepts died in the Senate. Educational freedom accounts, just to get to what Chris was talking about. between divisive concepts and education freedom accounts, we have made no progress in the Senate. So we don't have anything really making it worse, but we have been unable to make it better. And I'm going to go take care of the dog. And Jim, you can pick up on the House side.
I will, and this, I will give compliments to the Winnicott School Board for hosting a meeting a couple of weeks ago that Senator Sherman was at. Joan, I think you were there. I can't remember who all was there. There were a lot of us there. It was at an odd time, but regardless, here are 16 pages of bills in the House and in the Senate that affect education, most of which are bad. What I will do is scan this, and I can send it to all those who were on here. The threats to education right now, again, are it's difficult to understand. I think we would all agree that we would want our kids to have the best education possible, but to do that with public funds, to do that with public funds, to send kids to private schools, to put bounties on teachers' heads if they so much as even put a toe up to the line about something that somebody thinks is divisive, to cut school budgets based on a simple equation that population is a 1-to-1 ratio with funding, to ignore what special education costs. I mean, the attack is I don't want to make this sound like war, because we do have war right now, and war is very serious, but this is an attack on all fronts. And education had 100 bills. Education themselves, I think it was 120 bills in the House Education Committee. They are meeting every single day. 120 bills to go through. I don't know how they screw on their smiles in the morning. So can I talk to you about one bill? The bills that Senator Sherman brought up are probably the most critical bills that we have. And unfortunately, they have life. They have life in both the House and in the Senate. Then I will make sure to send this out to all of you.
That would be great. I'd love to see that, and we can get that posted on the Facebook page.
Right. So on the Senate side, we had, if you break this up into the two major categories on education, there's divisive concepts, and then there's the education freedom accounts. Yeah. We had a repeal of each of these. Those bills were killed. I had a bill in right now. If you, we call it the voucher bill. So that's the education freedom accounts. If you apply for a voucher, that's where you end up with adequacy funding. Basically, you get the equivalent of adequacy funding. It comes out of the Education Trust Fund. And so you pull your child out, you've applied for a voucher. The voucher typically is somewhere around $4,500 to $5,000. It can be as high as $8,000 if you meet certain criteria. You have to have below, I'm trying to remember the exact threshold, but you have to demonstrate that your household income is below a certain threshold, but you only have to do it in the first year. Mm-hmm. So if you have triplets and you want to homeschool them and you pull them out of the public school system, or you just have them and they haven't started the public school system, and you're going into the appropriate grade for kindergarten, you can get, say, let's round up, $5,000 per child, $15,000 a year. You meet criteria in your first year. You win the lottery in your second year. You're still good, K through 12, with no further means testing. So you don't have to meet criteria. You don't have to show that you meet criteria. So besides Senator Kahn's bill to do a full repeal, I have made the argument that this represents an entitlement, just like Medicaid, SNAP, and others. And if you look at the federal entitlements like Medicaid and SNAP, they have real-time monitoring of your eligibility. You fall just slightly below this. I know Alice knows this because she's had patients with Medicaid like I have, and they fall off Medicaid. And tough, you lose your benefits. Well, not for the kids. And the reason why I made it annually was really because I felt it would be inappropriate if a child had enough means to stop there or was no longer eligible to pull them out of school or pull their scholarship halfway through the school year. So that's why it was annual. That was killed in the Senate. And these bills, when they were killed during the testimony, an entire class of uniformed Catholic school students showed up to show the committee how much it meant to those kids. But virtually everyone else was opposed to vouchers.
I guess
And-
one of the questions I have is how does this reconcile with the New Hampshire Constitution, which says you can't use public money for a religious education?
Well, remember Bill Duncan, who he's from Newcastle. He started, what is the group that follows education?
Reaching Higher, New Hampshire.
Reaching Higher, that's right, Larry, thanks. And he ran for executive council. He's moved to Santa Barbara, but Bill was a real force behind this, and he actually brought suit based on the original scholarship program. It was dismissed, not on the merits, but because he didn't have standing. Rennie fixed that with a constitutional amendment, Rennie Cushing, and I can't remember what year that was, and nobody has brought suit since then. But essentially, my understanding is that with the constitutional amendment, any resident of any citizen of New Hampshire could bring suit to challenge the constitutionality. There are nationally, I believe there are multiple suits pending, and there may even be a Supreme Court case. So it's a great question, Chris, but in the state of New Hampshire, there hasn't been a subsequent suit that I know of since Bill's. And then the other one is divisive concepts. This is the one where basically the way I describe it is they've weaponized parents against teachers.
Mhm.
So there was an article apparently in today's Union Leader talking about one of the superintendents of schools who has dismissed 2 parent complaints so far. He investigated them and dismissed them and said, we will not be changing the way we teach. There is also an interpretation of this from the Attorney General's office that is apparently a must read. I haven't seen it yet, but Senator Khan and Senator Waters were talking about it today on the floor of the Senate. And there are huge problems in the interpretation of this, which leaves it open to the complaint. But the part that bothers me the most is that you as a teacher probably never signed on for this level of the ability of one disgruntled parent to destroy your career. And it's kind of similar in my world to malpractice. You can do everything right and still get sued. And that's something that Alice and I have lived with our entire careers, the possibility of suit, but teachers haven't. Teachers, and there is so little protection for the teacher in the divisive concept law. And we have already a huge workforce problem attracting teachers to the public education. And this is just going to make it harder. And some of the points that were made on the floor of the Senate today is, especially in minority communities, the inability to teach history as it actually existed confidently in the state of New Hampshire is going to drive teachers out of New Hampshire. And the number that was quoted today is 55% of veteran teachers in New Hampshire are rethinking staying in the state, public school. Books are being pulled off the curriculum, not because they necessarily are a violation, but because they might be misconstrued. It really reminds me, Alice, it reminds me of defensive medicine. And yet, you know, so I call it weaponizing parents against teachers. It's just another way to destroy our public school system. The scholarships destroy it financially. The divisive concepts destroy it on the workforce side and demoralizing teachers. So that's the education front. And we made zero progress today. We had no support from across the aisle.
Can I change gears a little bit and take advantage of the fact that in addition to being a state senator, Tom, you are a doctor. Can you maybe give us a quick update on, on what's going on with COVID from your perspective in the state?
Sure. The governor has asked all the public schools to remove the mandate, the mask mandates, and most schools are phasing them out, and probably appropriately. I think the thing to watch for is really reaction from kids against children who feel they want to or should wear masks. Remember, there are still a large number of children who are unvaccinated. What we have seen is that our vaccine rates, which we don't really monitor anyway because our system is not very robust, are falling off as Omicron is is finishing its natural course or the natural history. So bottom line is we are seeing numbers plummet. The CDC advises caution and is not lifting mask mandates aggressively. But Democratic governors across the country are lifting mask mandates, and the CDC is saying that might be a little premature, but it's probably not too much premature. So we're seeing marked improvement in our hospitals, outpatient. We're still seeing a number of patients testing positive every day, but less and less. I think the most important message, and something that Bill Marsh, who is a state rep, retired physician, and I have talked a lot about, is should we be really monitoring immunity rather than monitoring vaccination? So if you think about it, and I think the data still is not in yet, but if we're really saying that the immune system seems to be pretty good for about 6 months after either infection or vaccination, then that 6-month window is what Bill and I were talking about. Might be it's more of an immune. How many people are actually immune as opposed to how many people are actually vaccinated? And I think that's part of what we're seeing coming off of Omicron, is that so many people got sick because it's so contagious that we will see a much higher immunity in the state, even higher than we are going to see vaccination. And the last thing I would say is that there is a lot of talk about what is going to be the appropriate interval for ongoing boosters. So that's something to keep an eye out for, whether we need to be having a 4th injection for those of us who had 2 injections at first. Should we be boosting every 6 months or so? And hopefully not, but that's probably the next major issue that's going to be coming front and center. I, for one, still wear masks indoor, especially in a public space.
Okay. I have been asking a lot of questions. I want to make sure that, others who are on the call have a chance to ask any of our guests a question. If you have a question, you can either, wave at me or raise your hand virtually. Anybody have any question they want to ask of our guests?
Chris, I just wanted to make a comment.
Sure, go ahead.
Going back to divisive concepts, the only thing that's giving me hope right now is that there are at least 2 lawsuits against the state for the divisive concepts. And, you know,
One of those is federal,
Really?
John.
oh, is it? Okay, all right. Well, one's by the ACLU. I don't know if that's
I'm
federal.
not sure which one, but it was filed in federal court.
Okay. All right. So anyway, that's
Okay.
my one hope.
Deborah, you have a question.
Hi, Chris, Deborah, but I also have my husband Terry here, and he's got a question.
Okay, great.
Hey, guys, just to give you a little background, I live in North Hampton. I was a high school history teacher for 33 years at Somersworth. I taught history, social studies, and civics. And I couldn't agree more that this trend of trying to hamper teachers and what they teach, it's been going on for a long time, but obviously they got their marching orders from the national Republican Party, and it's filtered down. I would strongly urge that anybody running in November make this a campaign issue, because I think most people, even Republican parents, like their children's teachers. I don't think they realize the damage that this divisive concepts has done. I think anybody running for office should sit down and talk to the teachers in their community and get some talking points. I think it's a kind of issue that would resonate with voters, both Democrat, Independent, and Republican. And because I think most people are against banning books. I think most people are against sanitizing history. And I think it would resonate. And you can make it a very grassroots, down-to-earth level. I don't think you have to be a college-educated voter to understand this issue. I know in Somersworth, we always got great support. And if you know anything about Somersworth, it's not the most educated place on earth, but the parents really admired teachers. They admired people that got a college education because they never could. And I think you need to eliminate this aura that liberals are elitist. And I think that's the kind of thing you have to hammer away at, that teachers many times weren't necessarily the top students in their class, that they worked very hard. I used to tell my students all the time, I never made the honor roll in high school. I didn't really apply myself because parents tend to think that teachers' education came early or easy to them, that they were all A students. I think you need to humanize the profession. And I think it's the kind of issue that, like I said, would resonate. And just one other thing, and it's kind of frustrated me ever since the last election, that New Hampshire was the only state where the legislature flipped. And I think I've yet to see a real reckoning or kind of an autopsy on why that happened. I think the state Democratic Party needs new blood. I think we got outworked by the Republicans because of the pandemic. I think the Republicans went door to door and many Democratic candidates didn't because of the pandemic. And I'm not saying that was a bad decision health-wise, but I think the Republicans outworked us. And there was no reason that the New Hampshire legislature should have flipped that way. So I think there really needs to be a reckoning, and people need to be held accountable. And maybe there has been a change in the state leadership of the Republican Party. Maybe somebody could speak to that. And I love some of the old timers. I mean, the Martha Fuller Clarks and the others have been there for a long time. But I'm wondering, where's the new blood? Where is the looking in the mirror?
If I could just jump in on that, and then I think Larry Drake may be able to also address that. Larry and I were on the Blue Hampshire Task Force, which was a really pretty extensive deep dive led by Terry Norelli of a number of us to go across the state and do listening sessions. I can't remember how many there were, but I think Larry Drake was at every single one.
I missed a few.
But one thing I would say is last night I was at the Young Dems event in Derry, and it was phenomenal. Doug was there. I'm not a Young Dem, but I'm one at heart. And there is some really dynamic, wonderful leadership coming up through the ranks, both in the House and Senate. In our own backyard, Rebecca Perkins Quokka is phenomenal. She's the senator from District 21. So there is a lot of hope. I share the frustration with the last election. I think it was a combination of factors, and maybe Larry can give a little bit of a summary of how the task force, the conclusions we came to.
Yeah, well, so we, as Tom said, we interviewed quite a few people and looked at a lot of data. And Terry, if you want to share with me your email address, I can send you a link to the final report, which I thought was very good. And so there were a lot of recommendations made, and I think that a number of them are being implemented. I feel like the party is taking this seriously and making changes. We'll see. But one of the big things was the canvassing, and we were very very cautious because the coronavirus is very contagious, and we didn't have the vaccines back then. So, and the Republicans were not as cautious, and so that did make a difference. But just as a matter of fact, the margins for both the House and the Senate, it was not a blowout by any means. There were about 1,000 to 1,500 votes difference in maybe 20 races in the House and 3 races in the Senate, that if they had gone the other way, we would have won. So, but anyway, if you share with me your email address, I'll send you a link to the final report and be happy to discuss it with you.
Tom and Larry, was Matt Wilhelm at the meeting last night? Representative Wilhelm from Manchester?
Yes.
You talk about somebody he is the guy. He is the guy. We need to hitch our wagon to him. We need to give him a hitch to hitch onto. He is a guy who is who can help us in that way. Right.
And on the Senate side, we actually have Becky Whitley, who's from Concord. We have Rebecca Perkins Quokka. We have Sue Prentice. These are all freshman senators, and they are dynamos, just dynamos. They're awesome.
Point, I would say you're
The one thing that I would just add to the discussion that we've had, somebody's needs to mute themselves. Sorry. If you could mute yourself if you're not talking, that would be great. Now, the one thing I would add to this discussion is there is a lot of soul searching that was done and is being done at the state party level, which is all very positive. That needs to happen. But one of the things that and I've been involved at the local level for the past 15 years. And one of the things that has been consistent throughout that entire period has been a message that, we've gotten from the state party, which is basically, don't wait for us, do what you think you need to do at a local level. And just, your town better than anybody, and just, get going. We're going to be successful if we organize at the grassroots level. And we're very fortunate on the Seacoast that we've got some really vibrant local committees. I mean, Alice has done a fantastic job in Greenland. And we've got a great committee in Portsmouth. We've got a strong committee in Rye. Like to think that we've carried our fair share in Hampton. That's where it's going to happen. And that's another reason why, having this meeting tonight and this discussion is so important. We need to get, the people who are interested in North Hampton, we need to bring them together, and we need to just start, doing the work that needs to be done at the local level. And it's that old adage of, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat it one bit at a time. And if each town does their share, we can get this done. We've proven it that we can do it before, and we'll do it again. Alice, you have something you want to add?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a little off topic, but I think one of the most exciting things that happened in the New Hampshire Democratic Party this week or last week is that Tom Sherman is thinking about running for governor. I think that is an amazing development. I think you are the man to run. And I just think that is awesome. And if anybody's going to beat Sununu, maybe this time or maybe next time, I think you're the guy. And I hope that you don't have a primary challenger, and that I think if we can all work towards that, that would be an amazing development to have a Democrat and to have you in that office.
Well, thank you, Alice. And we will see. At this point, it's an exploratory committee, and I have really done, as I think Larry knows, I've done everything I possibly can to try to minimize the risk of a primary. Just history tells us that a primary in the governor's race is a good way to lose. So we'll see what happens over the next few weeks, but it's been super positive. I've been calling all over the state. I think the good news is that we also have, if I decide to do this, we have some really strong people who could fill my seat in the Senate. I just wanted to, if we have a minute, Chris, I would love to just mention, I had written down a few really positive things that are happening in the Senate that I know are near and dear to the hearts of Democrats. And I can probably do it in less than one sentence, maybe two.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Super amazing effort and tenacity and persistence on the part of Cindy Rosenwald from Nashua. Unanimous vote moving dental benefit for adult Medicaid recipients out of the Senate, fully funded by the recent court award or settlement award with WellSense, who was overcharging the state. It was $23 million. We're taking $19 million of that, and it's going to not only get this started, but also sustain it for a number of years. It is something that all of us, and Alice as a cardiologist will probably attest to the fact that poor dentition is a super big risk factor for cardiac disease. It's also something that a lot of us don't think about it, but it is one of the major detriments in trying to develop workforce. If you don't have teeth, you can't get a job. And it comes down to interviewing and trying to get a job. So this is huge for healthcare. It's huge for the population of people that are affected. And it's huge for New Hampshire. On the climate front, we are expanding net metering so that in such a way that the community college system and university system of New Hampshire will be basically municipalities along with the Peace Development Authority, so they can actually develop net metering in their complexes, which is enormous. We've moved funding to allow expansion of the turning basin in the Piscataqua, so that will allow us to see larger ships coming in, which allows the support for offshore wind. And then we have also supported the development of offshore wind. And in North Hampton, Jim, you know this well, we were able to have a victory with the Department of Transportation, finally making really, I think, great progress. And Jim, I don't know if you agree. I know there have been a few complaints, but I think the intersection of 151 and 111, finally, after all these years, getting that at least a temporary fix, which makes it much simpler, will hopefully save lives. All of this is progress that we're making at the state level that will, in some cases, like the intersection, really directly affect North Hampton. And I think the climate, of course, is very important for sea level rise. So while we have a lot of difficult things happening in the Senate, we are actually also making some progress, and that's good to see.
So just here's why Tom is going to be a wonderful governor. You know, we've got a problem at an intersection in North Hampton. So we start calling people and we start looking at people and we start writing letters. We made one phone call to Senator Sherman, who made, I don't know how many phone calls. Within like 12 minutes, we've got all of DOT in the North Hampton Town Hall with shovels and backhoes, and they're ready to go out there and work like that. No joke. That's how quickly he was able to get it done. We need you, Tom, in that corner office on the 3rd floor.
Okay, well, on that note, unless there are any other questions relating to, what's going on in Concord, I want to shift gears a little bit, and I'm sure everybody's aware of the fact that we have a town election coming up on March 8th. The election is going to be held in the North Hampton School Gymnasium. The polls are open between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. There are 23 articles on the town meeting warrant, and that a copy of that can be found on the town's website. There's 4 articles on the North Hampton School District warrant, and there's 6 articles on the Winnicott School District warrant, and both of those can be found on the SAU 21 website. But I did want to ask Jim to maybe, since Jim is, in addition to being a state rep, he's a selectman, and I think he's also the janitor of the town.
I am.
Just ask Jim if he could maybe just give us a quick rundown on, some of the important issues from his perspective that are going to be on the ballot on March 8th.
Thank you, Chris. And I can make this fairly brief, even though there's all of that on there and it's all very important. The issue that is of primary significance to us in North Hampton are Article 6 and Article 7, which are the safety center and our town administration building, to pass those. This would be a whole different conversation and take a while. We're in this weird place right now in North Hampton, and I wonder if it's happening in other places, where we've got a $10 million bond and exactly 0 negative comments, knock on wood. There is no murmur. There are no negative editorials. There are no letters to the editor, no signs, no nothing. We are hopeful that these articles are going to pass because people finally realize that we are trying to do the right thing for our first responders. So we are primarily concerned about Articles 6 and 7. But what I want to go to, which folds into the conversation that we're having here, is the important things for us are the Budget Committee and the School Committee. And what has happened, either by some wacky coincidence or by some interesting design, is that we have a representative from Little Boar's Head, which is a village in North Hampton, a village district, who was appointed to the Budget Committee, who is going to run, and this might just be, second shooter on the grassy knoll type conspiracy stuff, but this is where our heads are right now with Republicans running for the at-large seat to the Budget Committee. There is another person running for an at-large seat to the Budget Committee from the Little Boar's Head. If both of those people win, and they get a member appointed from Little Boar's Head, one district will have 3 people on the Budget Committee, and the Budget Committee will flip from a moderate all the way over to the right. And they have 3 people, including Kirsten Larson Schultz, running for the school board, which they will appoint somebody to the school board from that radical right. And suddenly the school budget and the town budget fall under the scrutiny of Free Staters. Again, second shooter on the grassy knoll, probably. I know too much, probably. But this is what we are seeing across the state as far as pressure that is coming from the ground up. Ultimately, Tom, you and I talked about this. We're seeing this slow grassroots effort. One person here, one person there. And I think ultimately they will try to have this trickle from top of ticket down. Don't take any of these races for granted. Don't take any of these races for granted at all. Understand the people who are running. So we are acutely aware of who's running for budget committee, school board, and then we want Article 6 and 7 to pass.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I think that's another reason why it's so important to have a strong local functioning town committee. And as much as these town level races are nonpartisan, they're not.
Right.
I can only speak from the experience that we've had in Hampton. I mean, after many years of just trying to respect the fact that it's nonpartisan and stay on the sidelines, and then just watch the continual, cast of characters that gets elected that isn't really doing our town much good. We finally decided that we wanted to get involved and make sure that we have good people running. And, I think that would be another reason that I would say why it's so important to have, a good committee in North Hampton, is to be looking out for those things and identifying candidates that, maybe aren't, don't have the best interests of the town at heart, and looking for people that do have the best interests at heart, and supporting them in their runs.
I would just add to that, Chris. I've seen strong committees and places where there aren't committees. There's really no real weak committees. It's just strong, or they're not really there. And the most recent powerhouse is Alice and Greenland. And in the last election, having been in 2 prior elections in this district, the difference in Greenland, having Alice build a really strong committee and not having had one, was the absolute reassurance that Greenland was going to re-elect Dennis and was going to elect me and elect Joan. And it was—
We're getting there.
It was a really huge shift from the before Alice phase. And it's not all Alice. There are just great Dems that have coalesced around the idea of a committee. And I think the importance of the committee, I think Larry Drake could probably talk about this all across Rockingham. As we're seeing school boards explode, school board meetings explode, and we're seeing the just how belligerent some people are becoming at school boards, we're realizing how critical it is that at every single level that we used to really not pay as much attention to, it's going to make a big difference, and it's going to impact fundamental education. We used to get great people running from both sides of the aisle for these positions. That's not happening, and that's what Jim is talking about.
Right.
So I think your point, Chris, is absolutely excellent. We still have, in my current District 24, we have towns that we don't have a coordinated effort, like North Hampton right now, although North Hampton has had prior committees that were very helpful. It makes all the difference in the world. And now it's going to make a difference for your kids, if you have kids, because it's what's going to happen at the school board level and other levels.
Deborah, you raised your hand again.
Yeah, we live in North Hampton. We'd love to have some signs supporting Articles 6 and 7. I notice a lot are around town, but nobody's contacted us. But if you would like to put up some signs for the candidates, we would be happy to do that. We live on Exeter Road, so it's a busy road.
Yeah, Chris, you've done that for us before, so I could just email you again if you want.
Okay.
And
All right.
I'm not the first person to say this, but I think in general, Republicans get support based on emotion, and Democrats try to get support based on logic and reason. And so many issues, I think Democrats make the mistake of, well, if people will just use their common sense, they'll see the logic behind it. Like, we don't have to explain it. Versus Republicans will say, well, the property taxes are too high, you're going to lose your home. They're playing on that fear, that emotion. Emotion is a very powerful thing in politics. And I don't think we should dismiss that. I think logic and reason is all well and good, but just to say to people, well, of course you want good schools. Why would you want to cut the budget is not enough. I think you have to combat that emotion, and we need to use emotion on our side as well to get emotionally people fired up, because they're not going to show up to vote unless they're angry or they have some other emotion that is driving them.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I couldn't disagree at all. So that's, you're right.
You are, and I'll make sure to get signs out to your house.
Okay, any other questions? Any closing comments from Jim, Tom, or Joan? Okay, well, thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate it. We're going to try to build on this meeting and hopefully meet on a regular basis. So we'll get the word out to people and see where it goes. So thank you all very much, and good night.
Thank you all for
Thank
coming.
you, everyone.
All right, thank you.